Welcome to the latest episode of The Chris White Show, a podcast dedicated to helping small to medium-sized business owners and anyone looking to make the entrepreneurial leap. A little about me, your host, Chris White. I'm an entrepreneur based in Brooklyn, New York. I currently own two companies, a boutique digital agency called Sneakers and a staffing and recruiting firm, Rad Hires. But enough about me. I'd like to introduce my latest guest, James Kirkby, founder of Kirkby Consulting, who is based on the other side of the pond in Germany. He owns and operates a boutique Shopify agency focused on conversion rate optimization for e-commerce companies. He's based again in a little tiny town, it sounds like, in Germany called Cologne. Is that how you pronounce it?
It's
Hopefully, like the
close to
town.
Cologne. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, near Cologne. But they service clients in the US, Germany, and the UK. His business has been featured in Business Insider and OMR, Europe's largest tech conference. And other than that, he's into coding and long distance biking. Now, you might be asking yourself, what the heck is Shopify Conversion Rate Optimization? Listen in as James demystifies conversion rate optimization and provides some invaluable tips on how to make more money with your Shopify store. And you can find out more about Kirkby Consulting at kirkbyconsulting.com. James, so great to have you on the show. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I wanted to jump right in. You're a younger guy, which I love. Probably one of if I do have regrets, it would be that I didn't start business sooner. I think, it just takes time and what I call reps. You got to get the reps in just like anything else. And the younger you start, the more time you got to get the reps in. And so, I wanted to understand a little bit more about your business journey, like what's your favorite success quote, as an entrepreneur?
So, being a bit younger, actually, I might have a bit of a different kind of guy that I picked out for this. So, I don't know if you know him, is Ryan Serhant of $1 Million Listing. So, the reality
Wow.
show, right? He's written like two different success books. So, my favorite quote is everyone has the same 1,400 minutes a day.
Wow. Yeah. Let's hear more about that. I definitely want to hear about that. That's cool.
So basically, it's a really cool quote, I think, because it reminds you that everyone, no matter how successful they are, they have the same time in each day, right? So
Hmm.
no matter how successful you are, how far along in your journey you are, you always have the same amount of time. So it's just a matter of how do you prioritize your day to get the most done and get the most successful stuff done.
Yeah, that's so true. Like you look at, like I look at, like he's a bit of a nut, but like Elon Musk, it's like how is this guy like running like SpaceX, like Twitter, like Tesla? It's like what, like and then I think he's got a biography coming out. I mean, like Tesla was on the brink, in like 2017, maybe 18, like things were not going well, like billions of dollars, like flushed down the tube, and like somehow he turned that around, like. Yeah, but I think about that a lot because, I'm like, well, what if you were president in the United States? Like, like what would your day be like? Like you've only got 24 hours in the day. Like there's every day, like just something's going horribly wrong, like somewhere like in the US, and like you've only got like 24 hours and you might want to, I don't know, go eat dinner. It's like, how does that work?
Well, I guess
It's
the key to it, probably, no matter if you're president or if you're running a company, is basically you have to outsource everything else so you can get to do the stuff you want to do, right? So having someone handle the
yeah, no, it's
crisis and
funny.
then go
Like,
eat dinner, yeah.
yeah, like people think being president of the US is like amazing, but it's like you get paid nothing. Like, it's you only have the worst problems like to deal with, and it's grueling, and you don't really have that much power either. But anywho, I could go on about politics, but no, I love that. I definitely take that to heart. I try to schedule my day like by the half hour, like block out time in my calendar to do stuff, especially longer term stuff. Otherwise, like it's just you'll never get it done. But again, given that you're a young guy, like I want to ask you about failure. Like what, how long have you been in, doing business and been an entrepreneur? And like within that time, like what would you say has been one of your bigger failures as an entrepreneur?
So I've been doing this for, I think, 5 years now. So I started when I was 19, right? Yeah, I've
Cool.
always been building Shopify stores. So I started building them for myself and now I'm doing it as an agency. And
Mm-hmm.
but this is my third time doing it as an agency. So my first two agencies were exactly the same, just with a different angle. They failed, right? So I'm trying to put my head through a brick wall basically and just doing it as often as possible until it works.
Like I said, you got to get the reps in. That's what I'm saying. Like you're probably not going to get it right. Like what happened with those first one or two like attempts?
So the first one, I just didn't think about how to acquire customers, right? I just sort of I
Mm.
made a website and said I do Shopify websites, and then I was surprised that nobody bought anything. Nobody came to my website. Nobody was buying anything. So that failed for a lack of customers.
Yeah.
And then the second time around, I did it with two friends of mine, and we didn't really talk about what we wanted to achieve, like what our goals were, and then we had a bit of a
Mm.
different vision where we were going.
Mm.
And what ended up happening basically is that we all had different ideas for what we were doing. So basically, we all ran in different directions, and that caused the company to fail.
Mm. Oh man, these are legendary mistakes, James. Legendary. I tell people I work with or advise or clients, like, build it and they may not come, or they will probably will not come. Like, you have to market, or like I do some work with startups, or like somebody wants to build a digital product, and or like maybe you want to launch an e-commerce store. It's like, okay, you built this thing, like, how's anybody going to find it? Like, there's so many stores, there's so many apps, so many services out there. Like, you've got to be like just all about like getting the word out for your service. And then partnering is hard, man. Like, I think I had a partner very early on when I started sneakers, and then he got busy doing stuff, and I sort of felt right away, like, all right, I'm trying to get biz here. I'm trying to get like do the work, and it was cool. It's just like, all right, looks like, you're just busy doing other stuff. I'm going to try and take this and run with it. Gave him a little cash, and just like took things over. But yeah, I don't know if I've been scarred by that like since then, in terms of trying to bring on a partner. I've just been solo, since that time. But it is really difficult to get alignment, and if you try to equally split the profits too, that gets tricky, because it's just like, well, somebody's going to be doing a lot more work than everybody else. It's just inevitable, and that person's going to feel taken advantage of. It's really hard. Like, I definitely tip my hat to especially digital agencies where like a couple co-founders started it.
You
um
don't often see ones that work, right? Most of the time they end up failing exactly for the reasons you said. And it's also like the number one thing people tell you, like as advice: if you ruin your cap table, that's the worst thing that can happen. Then you can't fix the business afterwards anymore, right?
mm-hmm mm-hmm So let's like talk about that a little bit. So you tried to launch your own store. What were you trying to sell with your store, by the way?
Um, T-shirts, print on demand T-shirts.
Yeah. Oh
The
wow.
number
Okay.
one. It's
Oh
like the
man.
worst e-commerce idea you can have. It was like 2016 or something, and then I was just, yeah,
All
as one
right.
does, right? Yeah.
Yeah, as one does. I love it. As one does. And but like, and then you like, what were you and your partners trying to do?
Also, that was an agency. So when I
Oh,
was working
okay.
with my partners, that was actually doing the same we're doing now. Before that, I launched my own Shopify stores on my own. So
Mm.
I've had, I think, 3 or 4 Shopify stores. They all failed. Then I had 2 agencies. They failed. And now I'm on my third agency trying to work things out.
What was that like sort of eureka moment for you though? Like was there a moment where you're like, well, there's something here. Like, I can definitely like take this and run with it, Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess the first time I started talking to people and acquiring customers, and then realizing that you could help them in a consistent way, doing the same services for each and every one over and over again. So you
Mm-hmm.
can see it's like not just luck, but it's actually a repeatable kind of service you can do for people to help them out. And that's like the
Mm-hmm.
moment when it clicked, that then it becomes a math formula, right? Because you just need to acquire new people, do the same thing for them, and that equals profit for you and for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool, man. That's amazing. Um, what do you see evolving? Like where do you see e-commerce like 5 to 10 years from now? Like what do you think e-commerce is going to look like? And Shopify's been around a while, right? What is it? Maybe has it been like 10 years, or it's at least,
Yeah,
yeah, right?
longer,
Like
I think, actually,
like
almost 20 years, honestly. But
is it really?
they,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Are there, like, do you see things happening? Like, is there going to be like everybody thought, like I always thought nothing would ever replace Google. And then I don't know, like ChatGPT comes along, and you're like, wow, maybe something could replace Google. Shopify like just became like building an e-commerce site before Shopify, right? Was like a bloody, like it was a mess, like it was complicated. Shopify was like the first thing that I ever saw was like, wow, it really makes checkout, like logistics, delivery, so much easier. Still a lot of work, but at least all in one package. Do you see like a next generation of e-commerce like solutions that are starting to come around, like that would replace something like Shopify? Like I'm just really curious about that.
Honestly, I think it's maybe not something new, but rather sort of a reversion to more marketplace models. So similar to what Amazon does. So Shopify is
Mm,
trying to build their own marketplace. They have Shopify Shop, which
really?
is like a marketplace for Shopify vendors, basically. And seeing like in this economic downturn, um, lots of D2C stores started to fail, right? So lots of people are trying to revert back to marketplaces, selling on marketplaces. So I think
Mm,
the D2C model, at least at high valuations, I don't know if that's a sustainable one for the future. It still has to prove itself. So I think it's going to be like an interesting thing to see. Does commerce go back to more like larger Amazon type things and larger stores, or can like the D2C, I'm selling direct to consumers, I'm running Facebook ads, can that model work long term?
mm. So they're almost doing more of like an Etsy type model
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
way.
yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. Because I think they make the shop. I have the shop app on my phone, which I really like. Actually, like for anybody out there, if you don't have it, you should go get it. It's one of the best apps I've seen where, it's like you connect your email inboxes, your Amazon account, and you can see like all your deliveries I've never shopped from it, but at least like I love being able to see like all my e-commerce deliveries like in one place in one app, which so I loved what they were doing there. But I think is that really going back? Is that because of what you experienced where it can be hard to launch a store and like be successful on your own?
So I think the issue is that most e-commerce businesses are really easy to clone. So in the end, it becomes like who's the better storyteller and who's the price leader, honestly, in comparable products. And the price leader will always be someone selling on a marketplace. And the best storytellers are only like a select few, and they can run D2C stores. But everyone else who is not a good storyteller and not a price leader, their stores tend to fail because Facebook ads get more expensive, and then it's not
Mm,
profitable anymore to run your own D2C store. So then you
mm,
revert back to selling on eBay, on Amazon, on the shop marketplace, for example.
gotcha. So I want to dive in. I want to dive into conversion rate optimization, or what we call CRO. And I would never claim to know much about it. I've done some e-commerce work with clients. I've used a lot of e-commerce stores. But how do you explain conversion rate optimization to somebody who doesn't even have a Shopify store? Like how do you help them understand that?
Well, I like to make an analogy to actually offline retail, because imagine you walk into a shoe store, and the door is broken, the lights are off, there's no shoes in the in the store, there's no attendant to help you. You're not going to buy anything, right? So, and obviously, if you apply common sense to that problem, you'd know what you need to do to fix. And exactly the same is the case for an online store, right? So if you make your products hard to find, if there's no one to help you out, if you have a question, if you can't pay, then people are not going to buy. So in a nutshell, it's basically applying common sense principles like that to a website.
Yeah, amazing. So along those lines, what are, I don't, if you had to say the top three things that people just seem to always get wrong, with their Shopify stores, what does that look like, for you? Like what are like the main things that you're looking for when you're first like working with a new customer and looking at a new site?
That actually ties back to what you said earlier about acquisition. So it's the
Hmm.
same for e-commerce businesses, right? Because um, the first thing you think about should be, what's my story I'm going to tell, and what's my acquisition strategy look like? And that informs how your website is going to be built, because you're trying
Hmm.
to tell a certain story to a certain audience, and they want to see a certain website to support that story you're telling. So that is really the first thing you should do. And most store owners don't do that. They source a cool product, they build a store, and then they think about, okay, how do we sell this to people?
So like with like, let's assume that like you've sort of nailed that story. Like, what does that mean? Like what's the first thing somebody needs to see then when they come to your site, right? Or do you think about that differently on mobile versus, I never thought about this, but is that different on mobile versus desktop? Or
Um, it is definitely different on mobile versus desktop, because people are in different life situations while browsing on those two um, variants, right? So on a desktop, people are in an office, they have maybe more time to think about it, they're in a well-lit room. And on mobile, they're probably either they're sitting in a car, they're sitting on their couch in the evening, so it's a different browsing experience. And so you need to think about what mind space is the consumer in when he comes through different devices. A more important thing is, though, to think, which pages do we send people to when they land on my page? Because you don't want to send everyone to the homepage if your ads are telling a different story, right? So if you're running a thematic Facebook ad around Christmas, you don't want to send people to a generic homepage. You want to send them to something that is more Christmas themed, for example. So,
mm,
and that's also something that most e-commerce owners don't think about, is sort of, what's the on-page funnel that I send people through, and do they get all the information they need in this funnel?
mm-hmm. So it's like, so it's kind of, it's sort of like, having the right kind of, if you're running a very targeted campaign, like have a landing page or something, like something that aligns with that specific campaign.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. But if you're like, let's say you're marketing a specific product, or you sell jewelry, and I don't know, you're running an ad for your new ring that you launched, like, are you just trying to direct people directly to the buy that like page for that ring, or are you trying to send them somewhere else?
That depends what your strategy is, right? But presume it is. So if you have a D2C jewelry company, you're going to have to tell a story around why the jewelry is so special. Otherwise, nobody will buy. They'll buy off Amazon or go
Ah,
to like a brand name retailer. And that's where the issue starts, right? Because then you need a landing page explaining that story. You can't just send people to a generic product page. So that's why
oh,
all of these things tie in together. And you really need to think about the storytelling first. And that informs your web design later on.
because people, like in that case, like if your rings are made by hand or something like that, like that could be a big selling point for people, right? Like you would want to
Exactly. Or
feature maybe like your ring making process, you're saying, or something like that.
sustainably sourced gold, for example, or
Yeah.
handmade, as you said. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. That's amazing. What, like, do you see for most stores, uh does most of their revenue come from, like, say, two or three items? Like, is it like sort of the like 20-80% rule, is, you know what I
So
mean? Like, is 80% of their revenue coming from like 20% of their products? Is that like common?
there's two different ones, actually. So that's the most common one, that you have like the 80/20 principle, and you have 20% of the products doing 80% of the revenue. And then you have the case where they sell a loss leader, and the loss leader is the most bought product. And so a product that they don't make any profit on when they sell to a first time buyer. And then they upsell them later down the process with different, more niche type products, right? So
Hmm.
um, classic example is, for they sell like a, I don't know, they sell some type of gadget that they sell add-ons for, right? And then the gadget they don't make any profit on, and then you buy the add-ons later on. Or you buy, I don't know, you buy a coffee machine that's used like disposable coffee pots, for example. They have the loss leader, they don't make any profit on the machine, and then they upsell you the coffee later on, for example. So that's the
Mm.
other common model there is.
Yeah. Oh wow. I never even, so it's sort of like a lead magnet, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Like the
Yeah.
lead magnet concept. Cool. Hey, I've been on acquisition.com, man. I've been learning all about more about lead magnets. But it's interesting to hear that like even e-commerce stores do that kind of stuff. I would have never even like necessarily thought about that.
It's the same principles apply, right? It's across all businesses, because you're selling to the same kind of people, right? And then the same marketing tactics apply.
Mm-hmm. Now, as I'm thinking about some of that stuff, I'm thinking about like, say, like revenue. Is there, in your experience, like a revenue number where, and obviously a lot of these businesses are different, they're selling different kind of products, but is there like sort of like a threshold that like a D2C like Shopify site needs to hit revenue wise, where you start to see maybe it's not like crazy growth, but at least some level of sustainability, where okay, this store and its product line has like a real running shot here at like survival. Is there like a threshold there that you commonly see? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, so I think you have to hit or cross $50,000 a month in revenue to sort of really say you've proven product market fit. It depends on the average order value, obviously. So if it's like if they're selling furniture, they'll get to that number quicker. But that's like a good average number, I'd say, to say if you manage to for 3 or 4 months to achieve that kind of revenue without losing money on ads, obviously, um, then I think you can safely say that you've got some type of traction that you can build on.
So that's essentially like a $500,000 a year like Shopify store, like annual
Basically,
revenue
yeah.
wise, basically. Like
Yeah.
that's a good benchmark for people.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's yeah, that's, and then what's the profit margin like on a store like that? Like what is the take home profit for somebody who's running a $500,000 a year? Like generally speaking, like in percentages, like what does that look like? And I only ask because like I've never had a Shopify store. I have no idea. Like I'm clueless.
So there's two components to that question. You can, if you muck up your margin in the sourcing process, then you don't stand a chance, because there's stores that have like 20% gross margins just from sourcing, right, before advertising costs or anything. And then you've mucked up the whole
Mm,
thing already and you need to start again, right? Because then
mm,
advertising costs factor in and then you'll be selling at a loss all of the time. Um, Usually you'll see like after advertising costs, people having like margins between like 15 and 25% would be considered healthy. So very low compared to like an agency model or something. But I've seen stores before that were running on like 2% profit margin. It's
mm.
not uncommon.
Wow. Wow. And like let's go back to that. Let's dig a little deeper on this. I'm really curious. Like so if a store is doing 50,000 a month in revenue, what is their advertising spend per month?
Depends which channel they're on, right? Because if you have a product that people search for, my go-to would be start with Google ads, and they tend to be quite a bit cheaper than Facebook ads, running discovery Facebook ads. Um, but probably you're going to be around, I don't know, probably $6,000 or $7,000 in ad spend a month to get to
Okay.
that number. It depends again
Yep.
on what you're selling, but that's like an average, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So it's pretty. Yeah. Like so I came across. I can't remember where, but it was sort of like a lot of like bigger companies. They basically spend probably 5 to 10% of their revenue on
Yeah,
marketing, like
yeah.
consistently. And like that seems to be, regardless of what business you're in, like sort of some sort of benchmark, of like trying to get to that 5%, and or starting the budget for that. So this is like pretty big business. So like you know, if you're going to launch a $500,000 store, like what kind of money are you trying to bring to the table to like sort of get it off the ground? Again, I mean, if you're selling furniture or whatever, but like generally you're going to have advertising costs, like, but just to like sort of, okay, my goal is to get to this $500,000 store. Like, what does somebody need? Like, what kind of money do they need to bring to the table to try and get something like that off the ground and like give themselves like a decent chance at success?
Less than you'd expect, actually. So in
Okay.
Germany, if you want to start a limited, you need at least 25,000 in capital, and that's usually like the amount that you'd say that you'd need to get that kind of stuff up and running. Because the beauty of online advertising is obviously you can pay after the ads have already been served, and you can also pay your suppliers after the ads have been served and you've started selling. So if you're really good and you hit a home run, you can capture revenue before you've actually spent hardly any of your money. And that's the thing you're trying to go for. If you have real product market fit and you run good ads, then you can like invest, I don't know, like 10, 15,000 up front, and then sort of
Pre-sale?
start going into, well, no, not pre-sale.
Oh.
So there's lots of suppliers will invoice you after they've delivered the stuff you're selling, basically, and then if you manage to turn the inventory over quick enough, you can gather the revenue, capture the revenue before you have to pay your supplier. Right? So you can pay your supplier and your advertising costs. If you put them on a credit card, for example, you can pay after you've already captured the revenue if you're good.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of good D2C companies do.
Wow. Yeah. So you've got to play like the spread on the money as well. Like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's cool. What like if there's one actionable thing you could give to like just any Shopify site owner today, I don't know, something basic, I don't know, anything that you just again commonly see, but like something that they could go do on their store today. Is there like just something you can think of that again you just can't help but notice when people are doing stuff?
I'll go for a really basic one. Add a call to action to each page of your site, because that's not something that Shopify does for you. Make sure every page has a call to action sending
Like
to
a
your
buy
best
button?
sellers.
Like
Like a buy button, like a go to this category now, go shop our best sellers, something like that. And I see it time and time again where people don't have one on the homepage slideshow at the top. There's just no button, nothing to click.
wow.
Please check that.
Hey, back to basics, man. Just you gotta ask them to buy. Ask them to buy. That's what it's all about. I love it. I love it. No, this was an awesome James, and I know we had maybe a couple technical hiccups. Hopefully, everything's good with the audio. I'll be sure to check that. But no, this has been invaluable. I think a lot of folks who have Shopify stores or are thinking about launching a Shopify store will come away with just like a lot of actionable tips and advice. So can't thank you enough for having you on the show. Sort of last question for you would be, like what is, sort of your daily success plan? Like what has made you successful at this point? Like, do you have a way that you like to start your day and structure your day? And do you feel like that plays a big part for you as a successful entrepreneur?
So I have a blocker in my calendar from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., which is called outreach. And it can be anything, but it has to be outreach related. So it has to be connecting with new people, sending new emails, following up on other cold emails, for example. It can even be like calling people that I've talked to before, just sort of being consistent with speaking to new people, getting myself and my business in front of new faces. And that's enough to gain enough traction over months to always have like a full lead pipeline, basically. And that's what keeps your business alive at the end.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, man. Lead generation. Never. I like my last episode with my buddy Tom was. We talked a lot about when you start a business, you're basically your job is lead generation. And I didn't always appreciate that enough early on, or sometimes you get busy with work, but you gotta do your best to just like block off the time and be consistent with like whatever it is. Like if you're running ads or you're doing prospecting or cold calling, like it doesn't matter what it is, following up with potential leads, you've got to dedicate consistent time to that. So I love that, man. But no, thank you so much again, James. Really great to have you on your show, brother. And I'll get this episode published pretty soon. So let's keep it rocking. Thanks, buddy.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure.